Hello everyone, today we are going to be reading Lucky Strike chapter 14, so let's get started. Later that week, Jen saw Chum Bailey sitting at a table in the school library, looking sad and forlorn as can be. She didn't know much about the boy, just what she'd heard from Nate and what she'd observed, that he was picked on at least as much as she. She had some idea how he'd come by his nickname, Chum. Jen sat across from the big boy and said, "Why so glum, Charles?" Chum sighed. "Things ain't right, Genesis." "Aren't," Jen corrected. "And explain, please." Chum looked up from his hand and studied this girl. He had never actually talked with Genesis Beam. He had never dared to. She was too smart for the likes of him. Folks in town talked about how odd she was, so different from everyone else in Paradise Beach. Chum had always admired how clean and pressed her jeans were, and how she stood up to people like Ricky Sands, but he'd never figured she'd talk to him. "What's not right, Charles?" Jen asked again. "Ever since my daddy got that money for winning the shrimp boat race, the other shrimpers are being mean to him," Chum said. "They say he didn't win the money fair and square." Jen frowned. How was his winning not fair? Because Nate was on board? And seeing as how Nate has superpowers from the lightning and all, some are saying Daddy didn't deserve to win. No one wants to be friends with him anymore. The big boy hung his head. I know how that feels, and it feels terrible, Genesis. Jen studied the boy for a long moment. She had never noticed how kind his face was. In truth, she had never noticed him at all. Maybe, she thought, her mother had been right about needing friends other than Nate. "Could you help me look for turtle nests after school today?" she asked. Chum looked up. "I thought Nate helped you with that." She sighed. "He used to, until he got so busy with other friends. It works better, the counting and watching, with two people." "I don't think I'm as smart as Nate. I might be more of a bother than a help," he said, poking at the dirt between his fingernails. With a paperclip. "Anyways, that's what my mama says." "I beg to differ," Jen said. Every day after school, Chum Bailey and Genesis Beam rode the bus back to Jen's house. They ate the snack prepared by Mrs. Beam and told her about their day at school, which was a study in contrasts. Since Chum had started going to the beach with her, they had found turtle tracks, but no nests, not a single one. But they didn't give up. "Hey, Jen," he called, waving something in the air. "Look at what I found." Chum trotted from the pile of seaweed and driftwood he had been pawing through and over to Jen. He held both hands out for her to see. She gasped. "A flip-flop and a camera. Those have to be Nathaniel's." And indeed they were. The flip-flop was a bit worse for wear, and the camera would most likely never work again. Still, Jen knew what they meant to Nate. She took the camera from Chum and wiped away the wet sand. Maybe if she took it back to Nate, he would be her friend again, and everything would be the way it was before. They would ride the bus together, monitor the turtles, and sit on their dune underneath the stars. Maybe with Chum, too. "Let's go find him," she said, grinning up at Chum. "Do you know where he is?" he asked. She nodded. "Where he always is." Slipping the camera and flip-flop into her beach bag, Jen trotted inland toward Billy Bowleg's park. She couldn't wait to see the look on Nate's face when he saw that she, not Ricky Sands or Connor or Buddy, she would reunite his missing shoes. "Hey, who's that waving like a maniac over there?" Ricky Sands squinted across the baseball field, where a large someone waved from behind a chain-link fence. The boys warming up for their after-school game stopped and looked toward the fence. "Is that your big brother, Ricky?" Buddy asked. Ricky shook his head. "Heck, I can't tell who it is." Then a small someone stepped out from behind the big someone. It cupped its hands around its mouth. "Nathaniel! Nathaniel Harlow!" it called out. Everyone looked at Nate. "Who's that?" Connor asked. He shook his head and shrugged. "How should I know?" But he did. He'd know that voice anywhere. What the heck was Jen doing here? He tried his level best to shrink into his clothes so she wouldn't see him, then would go away. The two figures came trotting across the field. out into the sunlight for all the boys to see. "Oh my heck," Ricky guffawed. Buddy and Connor gaped and grinned. "I can't believe it. The two weirdest kids in the whole school." Hey Nate," Chum said. "We've been looking all over for you. It sure is lucky we looked here." Nate purely did not feel lucky. Ricky slapped Nate on the back. "Did you hear that, Sparky? They've been looking all over for you. You're the lucky one, as usual." Jen studied the expression on Nate's face. She was not the best at reading people, she knew, but she had the distinct impression he was not happy to see them. That would all change, though, when she showed him the shoe and the camera. She elbowed Chum out of the way and smiled at Nate. "I brought you something." The boys hooted and hollered. "Ooh, Sparky, your girlfriend brought you something." Ricky made smoochy noises. Nate's face burned with humiliation. Jen ignored the boys. She pulled a bag from behind her back and handed it to Nate. "Open it," she said. Both she and Chum were grinning. Nate decided, like a couple of idiots. The boys crowded around him. "Ooh, I can't wait to see what Sparky's girlfriend brought him. Can you?" Connor said in a high, girly voice. Nate glared at Jen and Chum. Why did you have to show up here and ruin everything?" "Come on and see what it is," Chum implored. "Yeah," Ricky said. "Let's see." He grabbed the bag from Nate and pulled out the battered flip-flop. Nate gasped. "His shoe." Jen grinned. The look on his face was exactly what she'd expected. "We found your camera too. It's in the bag," she said. Connor grabbed the camera out of the bag and held it up for all to see. Water streaming from the case. Buddy grabbed the camera and doubled over with laughter. "What a great gift! A broken camera!" Part of Nate wanted to grab the flip-flop from Ricky and the camera from Buddy and dance with joy. Another part, though, wanted Jen and Chum to take the shoe and camera and just disappear. Now. Jen tried to grab the camera from Buddy. "That's Nathaniel's, not yours. Give it back to him." Buddy shoved her away, knocking her to the ground. "Hey," Chum cried, "leave her alone." He pulled Jen to her feet. He looked from Buddy to Nate. Surely he would stand up for her like he always had before. He would tell those boys a thing or two. Jen picked up the flip-flop and camera from the weeds. Someone must have stepped on it and scuffed in the scuffle because the case was cracked. "Here," she said, handing it to Nate and shaking a hand. "Oh yes, Sparky," Buddy said, sneering. "Take your camera and shoe and go play with your girlfriend and the big dummy." Jen felt Chum take a step back. She waited for Nate to tell the boys that they could all go take a flying leap to the moon. Instead, he pushed the flip-flop and waterlogged camera away, none too gently. They fell to the ground. "What do I want with just one flip-flop and a broken camera?" he said. Jen plucked her eyebrows, bunched up in confusion. "But now you can bring the shoes back together like you always wanted." Buddy and Connor about fell to the ground laughing. Ricky frowned. Nate felt words building up inside him like molten lava in a volcano. He knew they were terrible words, hurtful words, mean words, but he couldn't stop himself. "You are so weird, Jen. You're as weird as your name." Her eyes widened and her mouth dropped open. "I don't get it." "You never do," he said. Jen pulled frantically at her eyebrows. She felt a huge burning knot rising up from her stomach all the way to her eyes. "What is wrong with you?" she whispered. Nate grabbed his baseball glove. "There's nothing wrong with me. You're the weirdo." And before he could see the expression on her face, he turned his back on her. "Come on," he said to the boys. "Let's go play ball. I'm feeling lucky." Jen watched Nate strut across the weedy field. Her legs shook, her hands shook, her insides shook. Chum patted her on the shoulder. "I'm sorry he said those things to you. I'm used to it, but..." Jen tried to say something logical that would explain Nate's behavior. No words came. All she could feel was a deep, deep hurt like she'd never felt before. All she could hear were his words cutting into her like a knife. "You're the weirdo." She pulled away from Chum and ran faster than she ever had, away from Nate and the terrible, awful words. All right, that is it for chapter 14. We'll read chapter 15 next time. See you then.